Doctor Who's 15th Doctor era was obsessed with the Pantheon, but the show forgot that a Pantheon baby was already introduced to the Whoniverse over 14 years ago. Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor Who era featured a lot of discussion about babies and their parentage, from the identity of Ruby Sunday's mother to how Poppy existed. This eventually all led to the revelation of the Rani's plan in Doctor Who Season 15's finale, which involved using baby Desiderium, the god of wishes, and Conrad to help bring back Gallifrey. In the build-up to this, though, the Doctor crossed paths with several of Doctor Who's Pantheon gods. However, there was a notable absence of one Pantheon god, the Trickster. The villain was a notable figure in the spin-off The Sarah Jane Adventures, and the first Pantheon god to ever be established in Doctor Who's modern era, making it seem like Russell T Davies forgot about him in seasons 14 and 15. Sarah Jane Smith's daughter, Skye, was the child of a Pantheon god. Sarah Jane Smith's youngest child was also the daughter of the Trickster. A Doctor Who TV spin-off, The Sarah Jane Adventures centered on Sarah Jane Smith becoming a mother to Luke and having adventures with him and his friends. Luke left to go to Oxford in Season 4, and although Rani and Clyde were still around, 13, Bannerman Road was rather quiet. In the final season, Sarah Jane's daughter, Skye, was introduced as ASA baby. Skye was dropped on Sarah Jane's doorstep out of nowhere. However, this didn't last for long. Skye was artificially created by a woman named Miss Myers as part of the war between the Metalkind and Fleshkind, whose later appearance on Earth made the baby transform into her pre-adolescent form. Sarah Jane adopted Skye, and she became a part of the Sarah Jane Adventures gang for 3 two-part episodes. Unfortunately, Skye wasn't really remembered well by audiences. However, considering Luke appeared in Doctor Who multiple times, and the fact that Skye joined the Sarah Jane Adventures so last minute, it made sense. The Sarah Jane Adventures Season 5 was cut short, sadly, too. This played a major part in Skye not becoming a prominent member of the Whoniverse, and perhaps if Season 5's finale, The Battle of Bannerman Road, had aired, viewers would know Sarah Jane's daughter was also the child of the villainous Trickster. We now know that Doctor Who's Pantheon gods are powerful in different ways, and no two act the same way. Still, for years, all Doctor Who viewers had to judge the Pantheon on was the Trickster, at least, those who had only seen the show after the 2005 reboot and weren't familiar with the classic era. As the god of traps, Sarah Jane and her kids were frequently caught in the firing line of the Trickster's destruction. In theory, this made him a great villain for the overarching storyline of the 15th Doctor's arc, but alas, Doctor Who forgot about the towering, cloak-wearing god. Doctor Who's Pantheon of the Discord gods later introduced the likes of Maestro, Mr. Ring-a-Ding, and Desiderium. However, it was strange that Russell T Davies failed to utilize the Trickster in these stories, let alone not even mention him properly. Although Davies didn't write the Trickster's debut episode, he was the showrunner and so would have signed off on the character. Considering Davies brought back Clyde Langer in Doctor Who's Tales of the TARDIS, it seemed like a natural setup for reintroducing the Trickster. However, instead, all we got was a reference to Clyde's lingering feelings for Rani and a mention of Luke working with Sanjay at UNIT. That's why it was so odd that the Trickster and Skye weren't mentioned, especially as there were things that suggested this part of the Whoniverse canon hadn't been retconned or disregarded. The Sarah Jane Adventures season the 5th of May have been left unfinished, but this didn't make Skye's story irrelevant. Why, The Battle of Bannerman Road never aired. Only half of the Sarah Jane Adventures season 5 was filmed. A concept design of Skye Smith with a trickster face slowly taking over her own, from DWM, in the Sarah Jane Adventures in the Sarah Jane Adventures episode, The Battle of Bannerman Road. The Sarah Jane Adventures Season 5 only aired 3 out of its 6 two-part adventures, Skye, The Curse of Clyde Langer, and The Man Who Never Was. This was because Elizabeth Sladen, who portrayed Sarah Jane Smith, sadly passed away prior to the second half of the season being completed. However, a special edition of the Doctor Who magazine revealed information about the episodes that were never filmed. This included details about unfinished storylines, as well as concept images of what production hoped certain scenes would look like. It was explained that the Season 5 finale, The Battle of Bannerman Road, would reveal that Skye was the Trickster's daughter, and he had manipulated events so that the child would end up with Sarah Jane. Half of Skye's soul was Trickster, and the villain activated it to essentially use her as a weapon, resulting in a fight over her fate. Eventually, Skye would have learned how to banish the Trickster from reality. She would have guarded the Trickster forever as a dimensional entity herself, but she would have been graced with the wisdom and kindness of Sarah Jane, too, cementing herself as a hero. The Doctor Who webcast Farewell, Sarah Jane, which focused on Sarah Jane's funeral, implied that the events of The Battle of Bannerman Road still occurred anyway. However, even in Doctor Who's more recent mentions of the Sarah Jane Adventures characters, Skye's name never cropped up. Perhaps Davies realized trying to implement Sky into Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor Who era would be too complicated, especially as the character wasn't as established as Luke or Sarah Jane herself. Still, it would have been nice for Doctor Who to at least explain the Trickster's absence in the Pantheon storyline, even if it didn't involve reminding audiences of Sky.